Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the History of New Media Art. I'm your instructor, Jacqueline Gleisner. Today, we will continue our conversation about digital art, focusing on its impact on the cinematic. The last time we were together, we introduced a working definition for the term digital art as art that is made or presented using digital technology. And we viewed several examples of digitally altered photography, with two examples shown on this slide. Today, we are digging deeper into the relationship between moving images and digital art. How have digital technologies impacted the world of cinema? This will be one of our guiding questions throughout this lecture. First, let's talk about moving images as a genre. Movies can arguably be called one of the most, or perhaps the most dominant art form of the last century because their reach is global. Movies can span avant-garde and popular territory, and both forms are watched in equal measure. A person who does not normally seek out avant-garde art forms will go to the cinema to watch a movie that is not mainstream. Moving images are closest to simulating the human experience, which is perhaps why movies have been so popular. Films by masters like Sergei Eisenstein and Ingmar Bergman have a lovely texture to the quality of the film. Some fear that digital technology will replace the camera completely with computer-generated images, as was the case with Polar Express. The next several slides contain links to watch short pieces of a few classic films. Battleship Potemkin by Sergei Eisenstein is heralded as a masterpiece of international cinema. This Soviet silent film was released in 1925 as a tribute to Russian revolutionaries. As you watch the clip of this film, consider the remarkable feat of depicting such large-scale action at this early moment during film history. The scene on the Odessa steppes may seem familiar, and that's because this particular part of the film has been echoed in the work of many other filmmakers, like the now controversial figure of American culture, Woody Allen, as well as the Australian filmmaker Brian De Palma. Another work of propaganda is In Which We Serve from 1942. This film joined the playwright Noel Coward with a young film editor named David Lean. And like Battleship Potemkin, this work contains sweeping, large-scale scenes of action from a war. In this case, it's World War II. Coward and Lean had never directed on this scale before, so as an ambitious debut from these directors, this work stands out within film history. As you watch the trailer, remember that this was originally shot on 35mm film, and what you are watching has been translated from film to a digital form. The quality of the image may seem grainy or less sharp in places, but many film buffs love this precise texture of the medium. Now please watch the trailer for Persona, made by the Swedish filmmaker Ingmar Bergman. This psychological thriller paved the foundation for many others to come, names that may be more familiar to contemporary audiences such as David Lynch and Robert Altman. Now that you have seen a few examples of classic films and we've placed these works within a broader context of film history, let's pause to watch the trailer for The Polar Express. As I mentioned before, the film contains human characters that have been brought to life using live-action motion capture animation. This is what contributed to the film's uncanny feeling, which creeped some viewers out. This introduces one of the main points of this lecture. Lev Manovich, the author and new media theorist, said, "Live-action footage now functions as raw material for further compositing, animating, and morphing. In other words, by working with real footage of real people, artists and filmmakers can create and engender new, sometimes eerie, sometimes realistic, worlds that are based on the one we know and experience." Today we are looking again at moving images, exploring the connection between art and cinema. When we talk about cinema, we're referring to cinematography, the art of motion picture photography. We have seen numerous examples of video in this course so far, but how have these artists been influenced by the world of cinema? And in what ways are art films different from mainstream film? For starters, many art films incorporated more than one screen, and we will see this characteristic in some of today's examples. When you go to see a movie in a movie theater, there's only one screen, a very, very large one. Many art films have a panoramic scope. This relates to the first characteristic in a way. By opting to depict the content with more than one screen, more of the world can be shown, and the viewer can become further enveloped in the artist's vision. Some works are projected onto curved or other non-flat surfaces, which again heightens the close relationship with moving images and our world. Art cinema may involve more than one user. More than one person can activate or view different parts of the work at one time. Many art films are also online. This means that the content is streamed from a non-local source or accessible to a much broader audience simultaneously. And as we know, as we've seen with video in general, art cinema begins during the 1960s. Let's start with the work of the Iranian-born artist Shirin Neshat. Neshat grew up in an affluent family in Iran and now lives and works in New York City. Her work is mostly video, photography, and film, and we've seen other examples of different types of her work in a previous lecture. We've also discussed how Neshat is between two worlds. The central themes in her work are the contrast between Eastern and Western societies, femininity and masculinity, public life and private life, as well as antiquity and modernity. As an artist, she is often bridging the spaces between these subjects or drawing attention to their divide. We have already seen Neshat's Turbulent in this course. Keep in mind that this work involved two screens, a difficult experience to replicate when you're watching a clip of the film on your laptop. Neshat's work Rapture from 1998 shares many similarities with Turbulent. Both were shot in black and white on film and then transferred to DVD or Laserdisc for projection. The repression of women within an Islamic society emerges as a theme as well. The veiled women in the film are often reduced to a caricature within our Western culture, but Neshat rejects this, giving the women in the film a complex and rich inner life. The work was shown with two large format projections on opposite walls. The large projections evoke the cinema, but the viewer must choose where to place their attention because of the placement of the screens. In the sequences involving the men, they are often busy performing tasks, while the women chant and pray. Neshat celebrates aspects of Islamic culture, but she also stresses the repression of this world for its women. The film celebrates and probes significant dichotomies, which are mimicked in the way it was presented to viewers with its dual screen projections on the opposing walls. Next, let's take a look at the world of Isaac Julien. Julien began making short narrative films and documentaries in 1983. Looking for Langston from 1989 was a drama documentary that brought him a lot of exposure on the film festival circuit. This film was an homage to Harlem Renaissance poet Langston Hughes. Trust from 1996 was a double production of a 10-minute black and white 16mm film about two young males in a sadomasochistic drama. This film came out as the nation was grappling with the wake of the AIDS epidemic, and it included overhead views, dramatic lighting, and costumes to heighten the somber tone of the film. Please watch the interview with Julien linked on this page. One thing that sets Julien apart from mainstream cinema is his desire to consider the poetry within his work. Looking at the stills of Looking for Langston, you can sense this emphasis on the poetic in the documentary on the life of this young black artist. Trust, however, was not a documentary, but it touched on issues that were very relevant for its time. The film explored mental illness and loss, especially the impact of these topics on the gay community as the AIDS epidemic waned. Finnish artist Eija-Liisa Ahtela began her career as a film and television director. She rose to fame during the 1990s, and one of the things that sets her work apart from other artists was her use of multiple screens. She often employs multiple screens, and she does so to compartmentalize complex narratives. Different parts of the narrative are split across different projections, which are often shown on opposing or adjacent walls within one setting. The House is a 3-screen projection that included footage of a solitary woman flying through the trees, while Horizontal showed a massive tree stretched across 6 screens to create a panoramic and off-kilter view of the subject. The way that the branches move and sway slowly is calming and calls attention to the beauty and importance of this living form. French artist Pierre Huet is known for his sculpture as well as his conceptual video. Please watch the excerpt linked on this page about the artist from Art21. In 1995, Huet remade Alfred Hitchcock's 1953 film Rear Window. He said, "The actors first see their lines a few hours before shooting starts. It's precisely their problems, hesitations, silences, and so on that I record in real time." Continuing the trend of remaking other works, he also created Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon in his 1999 film The Third Afternoon. He hired amateur actors to do scenes from the original film for the purpose of exposing how cinema is made. Next, let's look at the American artist Doug Aitken and his ambitious installation at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. In 2007, he transformed an entire block of Manhattan as he covered the museum's exterior walls with projections. Please watch the link on this page that contains documentation of this exhibition. Then in 2013, Aitken created Mirror at the Seattle Art Museum, which utilized hundreds of hours of footage, changing in real time in response to life around it. It transformed the museum's exterior again, but this time into a living kaleidoscope. Artist Aitken said, quote, "With Mirror, I was interested in the idea of creating a living museum, a downtown building that could change in real time. It's like an urban earthwork. Seattle is a very complex and fascinating city on many levels, and Mirror was an attempt to reflect the simultaneity of the culture and landscape you find there." End quote. Artist and photographer Mikael Ravner uses digital editing quite extensively to erase recognizable individuals. Her videos carry traces of a similar kind of nihilism found in the works of Giacometti and Samuel Beckett. Time Left from 2003 is a still of which is shown here, was a monumental installation with rows of silhouetted figures marching toward an unclear end, accompanied by droning electronic music. The installation draws associations with condemned prisoners or perhaps survivors from an apocalypse. To introduce the work of the American artist Paul Pfeiffer, please watch the video segment from Art21 linked on this page. Pfeiffer has mastered the art of post-production digital editing techniques. For instance, John 3:16 from 2000 contains more than 5,000 frames of a basketball shot that were digitized. Fragment of a Crucifixion after Francis Bacon contains isolated footage of a basketball player after making a shot. It takes on simultaneous strange meanings through this process. Lastly, we will touch on Yves Sussman's 89 Seconds at Alcazar from 2004. In this 12-minute video loop, shot in high definition, the activities of the same people are pictured in Velázquez's painting Las Minas are shown. The painting itself, shown on this slide, is about the act of looking. Or as Sussman described it, Las Meninas is a big surveillance. If you extrapolate out and you continue to surveil that space, where does it go? You have to figure out the choreography and the movement, before and after. I'm really interested in cinematic history. the history of how you tell stories, how you employ narrative, how you choose to work with language or not. Ironically, and you would not know this from watching such a highly stylized, choreographed piece, 89 Seconds was influenced by my experience shooting cinema verite, with watching what's going on in front of you, with observing everyday banalities. That sort of observation can take place anywhere, in a museum, on a street, in a supermarket. I'm not making work about painting. I am inspired by paintings, but it's often a disappointment to people to find out that I'm not especially interested in painting. And here is a still from her film. So to conclude this presentation, we have been exploring the links between art videos and cinema. We've looked at the ways that they are connected, and we have also talked about how these examples depart from traditional cinema. For example, Shirin Neshat's Rapture feels cinematic, but with its presentation with dualistic synced narratives playing on opposing walls, it is set apart from a traditional movie theater experience. Thanks as always for watching today, and I will see you soon.